Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And that's from the movie Ferris Bueller. And that is my guest, Shawn Black's favorite quote. So I love hearing that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you in advance for subscribing and sharing with your friends. This is on YouTube and all the podcast spots. So wherever you're finding it, if you want to find it somewhere else, that would be awesome. Oh my gosh, my guest, Shawn Black, is kind of a big deal. And I'm really honored to have him on my show. He is an international award-winning boudoir photographer. He's an author and he is an educator, like in a big, big way. He has a studio called Couture Black. How did you get that idea for a business name, Shawn?
Uh,
The black part. That's my
Yeah,
joke here. He's in
yeah.
Boston. What part of Boston, Shawn?
I am located about 15 minutes north up on the North Shore of Boston, right
Oh,
next to Salem, which most people recognize for the witches.
yes, yes. I had a Boston boyfriend for a while, and we went up to Salem, and I got to get a little Dorchester accent hanging out with him. So it's a
Did you
it
park the car
Boston,
in the Harvard Yard?
yeah, but Dorchester I think is a little rougher, a little more working class
Yeah.
than up in
Dorchester's more of the wicked pisser.
the wicked pissa. Yeah. Other than the accent, I think San Diego and Boston have some similarities. Have you been here?
It is one of the areas I've been told it is absolutely amazing. I need to go there, but I have yet to make it. And part of me is glad because I've been told that you never leave when you get there, especially if you come from the Northeast, because the weather is polar opposite of us.
Yes, most of the time. We do have, like, we had a hot spell this summer, and I didn't know that the lemons on my big tree that was full of lemons would go into shock, and it was too hot to go outside and water. I just didn't even think about it. And every day after that, it dropped like 15 lemons for about 2 weeks from the shock. So every now and then we get hot or cold. But yeah, we're pretty spoiled. But we're right on water like Boston, but we certainly don't have the history. So anywho, so I was telling you all the goodness about Shawn. So he is an advocate for the boudoir community. He started an organization that we'll talk about more to support boudoir photographers, AIBP. What else? His tagline is be bold, be sexy, be you, with the be you the most important part. He has spoken everywhere, WPPI, Imaging, Shutterfest, Clickland, on and on and on, and mentored privately, and is sponsored by about 6 different photography products. So if I say everything, we won't have time for our conversation. So welcome, Shawn. Thank you so, so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure being here.
So, no, it's my pleasure. No, yes, it is. I'm in a silly mood today. All right. So, a little quickie bio, please, about how you got started in photography, or whatever. Like, yeah, I got to get my brain
So
here this morning, so I'll let you talk.
ultimately, I've always been a creative in my life. I wanted originally to be like Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis. I was focused on films and video and all of that when I was younger. Always with a kid with a camcorder, making small little things when I was younger. Then got into high school and we had television production. I took that and fell in love with it. My whole idea was I'm going to go to college and I'm going to be either a film or TV producer. Went to Boston University, majored in television and film, minored in still photography, and graduated with a bachelor's in television and film production. came out, worked in local sports production. And then when the economy started to flip, or at least we thought we did in the early 2000s, I sold my soul to the devil and went to the agency side of things and worked on commercial production. And in the early 2000s, if it was a local Boston, New England area Dunkin' Donuts, Volkswagen, McDonald's commercial, I had my hand on it at some point. And then I moved through all the different types of media, whether it be print, online, radio, TV, until 2010. I was working for a small boutique online agency, and they called us in at Friday at 5:30 and said, "Hey, you guys don't need to come in on Monday. We're closing the Boston office." And so it was one of those days that you think is horrible in the moment, but hindsight was probably one of the best days of my life because it forced change and then put me into the career that I'm in now and made me start my photography business. Um, so that's sort of the backstory to get me to photography.
Right. Wow. So I relate to that worst thing, best thing, because I was running a little business in the San Diego airport, exchanging foreign currency and selling travel insurance. And then a big recession hit, and I'd had a guarantee from Mutual of Omaha, um, and they wanted to cut that in half. And by that time, I was already addicted to photography as a, as a passion. And when they canceled my contract, the woman said exactly what you just said. You're going to discover that this is one of the best things to happen to you. And absolutely, it was, because then I was like where do I go from here? And the universe just kept telling me photography, photography. So how did you decide to get into boudoir? Did you start there, or was that a journey? And how long ago was that?
So the layoff day where they laid off and closed the office was in 2010.
Mm.
And yeah, mine wasn't as amicable. I left with throwing my parking pass at the person and whatnot. It was like, nope, I'm burning this bridge and the whole building
Really?
down right now. And so I left there. I got in my car, and the first call was not to my wife, Michelle, who at the time was only my girlfriend. It was actually to my jeweler to say, hold on a second, I need to make
Oh,
sure I still have all that money for the engagement ring.
oops.
So when I talk about like major change point, this was right when I'm about to propose to my wife, all of those things. So after that call, I got home, told Michelle what was going on, and she's like, you want to go try and make a go of it at photography because I'd been shooting on the side to keep my creative Jones happy and doing small little gigs. And she's like, you ought to go out and do it. And so I put everything together and I looked, I'm like, okay, what do I want to focus on? And weddings and events was something that was a little bit easier to get into. There was
Mm,
a lot of work, and is a less steep learning curve than studio photography or anything like that. So I got into shooting weddings, both as my own company. I worked for a couple of others to really fill my schedule up and get as much time behind a camera as I could, network with as many different types of vendors, and got off and running because when I put my mind to something, I refuse to fail.
mm,
So I wanted to not only just have a viable career as a photographer, I wanted to be one of the best.
mm-hmm,
And so I worked hard educating myself, working, taking any jobs that I could in the beginning, then narrowing it down just to sort of events and weddings, then stripping it down to, okay, I'm no longer really working for anyone else. I can survive and I have enough of a reputation and influx of clients to have my own brand as Shawn Black Photography. And so I was shooting anywhere from probably 40 to 60 weddings a year in the beginning.
mm-hmm,
And that was 2010. I got to about probably 2011, late in that season, 2012, and I had brides asking me, "Oh, do you shoot boudoir? I'd love
Uh-huh.
to give a gift to my significant other." And I said no, and um, I kept sending this money elsewhere and referring it out. And then one day it was like the light dawns on Marblehead, and I'm like, why am I sending this money elsewhere?
Yeah.
So I started to delve into educating myself as to what exactly boudoir was, how to shoot it, all of the techniques and everything, and just dove into it and launched my boudoir brand in 2013,
Mm,
Couture Black. So it wasn't out of the gate.
right. One of the things I love about doing wedding photography is that you learn all kinds of aspects of photography in a not as risky of an environment because it's architecture, it's fashion, it's candids, it's ceremony, food photography. If the cake is food photography. Um, and so I imagine the transition to boudoir, once you kind of thought about it, was you really were having experience posing women beautifully as a wedding photographer, I'm guessing. So, who were your mentors in the
So
boudoir world?
So when I first started to delve into boudoir, and again, this is almost 12 years ago now, um, there wasn't a lot of education for it. The big names at the time were Krista Miola, um, and that was about it as far as known names in the industry.
Hmm.
AIBP existed at the time. It had been founded a couple of years earlier, and I had been lucky enough to stumble upon them. And the community there was people who'd been in it for several years and weren't quite these big known names because 12 years ago, 13 years ago, boudoir wasn't huge yet. It
Right.
was starting to break. And so by becoming a part of AIBP, that community and meeting some of now my best friends in the photo industry, learning along with them, learning from them, people like Craig Lemaire, Kate Scaglione, Jennifer Talrico, Beth Claire. I started to develop my style. I learned a ton about what goes into creating a brand that's going to resonate with women because originally when I first started out it was just about a pretty pictures and a gift for the significant other. It wasn't about my actual client and her experience and body positivity and empowerment. It was nope, it's a gift. Then I had my first non-bridal clients a couple months in, and I realized exactly how screwed up our culture, our society, our media is as far as the message it bombards you as women.
Hmm.
You're not beautiful unless you're this. You're not sexy unless you're that. If you're this age, you can't be this. And it's all bullshit. And this all coincided with the fact that I'd been married a few years. We had just had my daughter about a year earlier. So it all came together, changing and creating my brand philosophy of body positivity, that be bold, be sexy, be you philosophy,
Mm.
because I don't ever want my wife or my daughter to not feel beautiful or powerful or confident. And I know that every woman that I help feel that way and see themselves in that way, it's like that stone being thrown into the pond and it ripples out
Mm.
and spreads that message and eventually starts to get back. And yeah, in the beginning, it was that one or two stones that I'm throwing to fast forward to now, where I shoot over 120 sessions a year. It's more like chucking a bag of rocks and making
Right.
waves.
So this really touches me. And when I started in photography in the 80s, boudoir became a thing, but it was mostly men photographers. I think maybe 5% of photographers were women, and we were newer. And at print competitions, the boudoir photographs looked like uh, gentle Playboy, um, what a man would potentially, in theory, find hot and sexy. And those would score really high. And then as women started entering things of children, they never got merits because it was just a whole different world. And it's the journey into the balance in our industry is exciting for me. I'm so happy, uh, that there's room for all of us, but having you share that because it died out. I did not get into it because I didn't want to, I bought some boas and some lingeries, but it what I was seeing was so not something that I felt really drawn to because it was more about a man's vision and not about what I love what you said, the empowerment. There was a photograph that I judged that was a woman on a bed and she was in lingerie and she was on one knee and an elbow with a telephone with her tushy in the air. With all the little boudoir things that were the 80s 90s, and my critique was I can't think of why a woman would get in this position and hold a telephone ever. And that everybody cracked up, and so it just makes me so happy that this has evolved, and I love that you've been a part of this evolution in the industry to be something that, yeah, the guys are going to love it, but it's about the subjects, the women, or if you do some boudoir, it's
Yep.
about them as well. Or if you do couples, it's about more than just that predictable, old-fashioned idea of sexiness and beauty, from the men's perspective. So thank you.
And that is exactly one of the things that I sort of try and fight it, but against in educating and bringing the message of how to not just be another, and it's like you always go with the old term jag, just a guy with a camera,
Ah,
but it could be just a woman. And for me, it doesn't matter. It's the whole idea when I'm pre-interviewing, they've booked their session, we're doing their pre-session consult to find out who they are, what they love about their body, what they may not love as much. But I always ask them, like, what's your favorite physical part of your body and why? And the why is the more important part because when they look at the image, I want them to see more than anyone else does. Like, and the example I always use is I had a client I've shot multiple times. She's a marathoner, and I think it was her second session. She had asked, she's like, "Yeah, can you show me sort of a mix of the musculature, but also soft and feminine, and mix those two throughout the imagery?" And I'm like, I've got a couple of really cool ideas, and I had this one pose where she's laid back. She's got this top on, and it leaves her legs completely exposed, and you see the musculature in her legs, but the top half is really soft and everything. And so she, at her reveal, was like, "I absolutely love this image." And she's like, "Do you know what I see in it?" And I'm like, "No, tell me." And she's like, "I see the mornings that I got up at 4:30 in the morning and it was freezing cold or raining and I had to go run 20 miles. Or I see um, right on Hereford, left on Boylston, which are the final two turns of the Boston Marathon before the sprint to the finish line." And that's always what I strive for is that deeper meaning to whoever the subject is. Everyone else is going to look and like, "Oh my God, you look amazing, you look hot, you look pretty, it's a beautiful image."
mhm.
All of those things, but I want the subject to see something deeper and connect with it that much more personally than anyone else possibly could. And that's the difference between what you were talking about in the 80s or in the 90s with glamour shots and where it was just very plastic and very from the male gaze. Because again, like you said, back in the 80s and even in the 90s, the photography industry is dominated by men, both as far as in the uh, company hierarchy, all the way down to the person releasing a shutter. was a male dominated hierarchy all the way up the ladder. I'm like, it's changed greatly where you look at some of your top photographers in the world right now. Lindsay Adler comes to mind. In fact, she'll be teaching in a week at the AIBP retreat in my studio.
Hmm.
So I'm like, she's top of mind for me right
Yeah.
now. But you look at Annie Leibovitz, some of the top names in the industry are all women now. And
Mhm.
it's amazing to see the work that they put out and how they've changed the industry and how photography is viewed.
Right. Absolutely. And interesting to me, I I think a big part of it is for some reason women reach out for personal growth and coaching and mentorship so much more than men. I don't know why that is. Maybe you've had a different experience because you're a dude and I'm not a dude. That, but like when I've been to even in my coaching career, one of the things I loved when I decided to about 10 years ago to also start coaching is it was a whole new world of education that I could go to conferences and I could have mentors and I could learn. And 80% of the audience in all of these places are women. So if guys think, oh, women are taking over the world, uh, it's because we're taking advantage of all of the opportunities out there. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is it different in
Oh
your
no, you're
world?
no, it's in my one-on-one mentorships, my conference classes, or even smaller workshops that I've done. It is definitely skewed more towards female students. There's a little bit more when it comes to, I think, smaller workshops where I'll see it almost come to that 50-50, but it's never more skewed male versus female,
Yeah.
um, at least in the boudoir realm. Like you do see more men shooting boudoir, but it is definitely more a female dominated, and um, there are far less men that are at the top and recognizable doing things the right way than there are in other genres of
Yeah.
photography.
Well, I love that first of all, that you're speaking everywhere, that you're the president of this organization, so that men can see that it isn't just like, oh, I can't do this because I'm a man and women won't be comfortable with me. You have such a clear presence of kindness and trustworthiness and this great voice and um so you got all the things that would make a woman trust you while she's in lingerie, in my opinion, or most of us. So it's the approach, it's the I don't know, you know what I'm talking about, that it
It's
isn't
the
just
fact
a
that we've
women's
built a
world.
reputation,
Right.
and it's about creating a reputation, a brand, a belief, and not just putting it out there to have a marketing campaign or an advertising. If you don't believe it, and this actually sort of transitions into when I teach, when it's sort of an intro class, one of the very first things that I talk about is your why. Why are you shooting boudoir? What is your message that you want to get out there? And they're like, oh, I want to, because of female empowerment or body positivity. I'm like, no, that's the fluff why. What's beneath that? Why do you want to do that? I'm like, I said, for me, it's my wife and daughter and where I transitioned into that. That's my why.
Right.
It's then expressed with body positivity and female empowerment and all of that. But I'm like, that's the top level why you need to dig deeper. And it's funny because normally when I do that and I ask that question, we go around the room and
Mhm.
ask everyone, and it usually brings people to tears because
Mhm.
it gets that deeper, more emotional and vulnerability out of you. And boudoir is definitely a vulnerable category that you need to be willing to be open with your clients. Otherwise, it is just going to be a line of bullshit and they're going to see through that and they're not going to feel comfortable. You're not going to have that vibrant client base that wants to yell from the rooftops to say, no, you need to shoot with Shawn or you need to shoot with so and so because they are amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, that what I'm hearing from you that I agree with is that be, because you know your why, then everything you do is informed by that why. And so energetically, I really believe in the power of our energy, and it's very magnetic when you're with someone who has a passion for something because of a deeper reason that's very personal to them. And so most people probably wouldn't know why they're comfortable, why they're drawn to different photographers, but they feel it, and they feel the caring and the actual desire to be of service to the client. So, yeah, I love hearing that from you. Um,
You nailed what I say. I'm like, everything draws back to your why. It's not just, oh, what's your
Absolutely.
brand? Well, my font is this and my colors are this.
Oh,
No, it's every question that you have in your brand should refer back to your why
right,
and build from there so that it is all in one line. It is genuine, it is authentic, and it's not just, oh, I like mint and gold. And
right.
no, I'm like,
Or
it's
or I think my client would like mint and gold. That's an even
even
farther
worse.
from the true branding is thinking that you can figure out what's going to attract your client. But what I hear you say is what attracts our clients is authenticity, and then communicating that on authenticity in, there's the obvious ways, websites and things like that. There's how we communicate. There's all the studio, everything, and it's also that core of that why. I mean, my why in photographing children has to do with my own insecurities as a child, not realizing how special and loved and smart and wonderful I was, as are all kids. And so I want the children that I photograph to see themselves and see how special they are and see that every day. And also for parents to see um, their children every day as the angels that they are, because it's easy to forget. They're driving you crazy. And I've said, when I used to teach children's photography, I said I think I avoided uh, a lot of children getting spankings or or worse, or punished because they were acting terribly, but the parent looks up on the wall and is like, oh, that's my angel. I mean, there was a time when my great niece, who I love, and I cut her cord when she was born, that I thought I didn't like her anymore. And then I would see a photograph that I took of her and be like, oh, that's right. I love that girl. And we're just in a phase. So yeah, our whys can be different, but yeah, I hadn't thought about it so deeply with the boudoir world. So thank you for sharing your heart for that.
And it's something that if you try to fake it, it's readily apparent, and it all comes back to the age-old saying of people buy or work with who they like. If they don't like you or feel comfortable with you or feel you're genuine and authentic, they're not going to buy from you or they're not going to buy as large. If they did the session and they're like, no, people
Right.
are going to sit there and they're going to spend and they're going to come back to people that they like and consider worth investing that time and their funds in.
Hmm. Um, so is it you as the only photographer in your studio?
Yes, my wife in 2020 became studio manager. She used to work in the corporate world as well. She was a director at one of the local hotels in Boston. And with the pandemic, her hotel got sold. All the directors were being laid off. and we had planned to move her out of the corporate world and work with me that fall. So the timetable just got sped up a little bit. So she's
Mhm.
been my studio manager, and makes everything on the back end run since 2020. We always like to say, I make it pretty, she makes it work. Um,
So I've said my whole career, especially back when I was doing weddings, that I needed a wife because so many of these dudes I've been talking about, and I love those guys. So I don't want anybody thinking I'm a he woman man hater. I love men. Um, but they would have these wonderful wives that were doing just what you said, doing the support, doing the sales, doing the consultations, now probably doing the editing, and the guys would get to photograph and enjoy that part. And I didn't need a wife for the, personal wifey things, but that when you marry well, it's a it's a good idea. But yeah, anyway, so
yeah.
I'm a little, I guess not envious, but I could have figured it out and hired a wife. I know that. Um,
Oh, trust me, you're not the only one. There's numerous other photographers and friends of mine that are like, I need a Michelle. And because especially when I'm at conferences teaching, she's the one that keeps me on track
right.
because I will stay after class and talk forever. Or if you stop me in the hallway, I'm not going to big time you and be like, oh, nope, sorry, I don't talk. No, I'll sit there and I'll give you my time. And
And she'll be
she's
like,
the
come
bad
on,
guy of
honey.
like, he has to go, he has to get to his next class,
Yeah.
or he's got to shoot here or whatever it may be. So yeah, she admits she's not the creative. That is my end of everything, but she does our consults, she does runs the website, all of those things. She's my studio assistant, but all the creative end of it is me.
So, do you know Bruce Hudson in the Pacific Northwest? He's my
Name
era.
sounds familiar,
He's my
but
era,
do
and he
not
used to
know.
teach a lot. And uh, his he ended up raising a wife. Only it's his son. His wife, who passed away, was like the ultimate photographer's support team. And now his son is the person. His son grew up, and so I guess you could raise your own back end. Anyway, I don't know if this is something we're just enjoying a conversation, if it's interesting to anybody else. So I wanted to ask you because I see that there's something that separates you from a great number of boudoir photographers. And I wanted to talk about that a little, have you share about that, and maybe a little bit of techie talk about it. So, what separates you from other photographers, Mr. Shawn,
Um,
in your work?
my my style is distinct where a lot of boudoir photographers shoot natural light. I am 100% studio lighting, or 99.9% studio lighting in my work. Not that I can't shoot natural light, I can shoot any form, and a lot of that comes from starting in weddings. But even when I was in weddings, I shot a very bold, contrasty, more sort of editorial commercial look to it. I never followed the trends of like the light lens flares and light leaks and stuff like that. And part of the reason why my style has gone to that dark and moody and controlling it is I'm actually colorblind.
Oh,
I can see color. Um, I just see it differently than you do, and it's not due to rods and cones. I have a very rare type where it's more due to my optic nerve and the way that my brain interprets color.
mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until recently, probably I want to say it's 3 years ago, when the Disney movie Soul came out at Christmas, and I
Mm-hmm.
watched it 9 million times in 2 days with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone was raving like, "Oh my God, this movie's incredible!" And so I watched it the first time, and I'm like, the beginning of it, I'm like, this movie sucks. And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, this movie's incredible. And we watched it another time and I'm like, this movie sucks. And then I'm like, at the end, well, it was incredible.
Hmm.
And it was like the fourth or fifth watching in like 48 hours to where it finally hit me. The beginning of the movie is all in the afterlife and it's washed out color, opaque, and everything. And then midway through the movie, he comes back to life and he is back on Earth, full color, vibrant, bold colors and everything. And that's when it hit me. It's like it's that transition point. I'm like the beginning, that washed out, desaturated is like nails on a chalkboard, literally to my brain.
Hmm.
And I'd never, and at this point, I was, I think, 42, 43 years old. Um, I'd never realized at that point of the actually profound effect of how it really shaped the look and style of my work to be that more bold, more contrasty,
Hmm.
definitely um, not washed out or anything like that. And it took a Disney movie, watching it numerous
Over and over.
times for it to finally hit me and realize, like, yeah, this is it's a physical handicap, but it is something that it hurts my brain when I'm looking at that type of imagery, and I'm definitely drawn to more moodier and darker. And because of that, I just dove into the work of studio lighting and becoming an expert on that. And really, I love playing with and shaping light. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's what I have a blast in every session when I'm sitting there and it's like, oh, I want to do this and create something new or find a new way to shape the body with light. Because I don't believe in reshaping a body with Photoshop, because they can't look like that. But if I do it in posing and lighting and the angles that I shoot, like that's reality. They can look like that and they do look like that.
Mhm.
So I sit there and I'm constantly geeking out on lighting, and playing with different techniques and finding new ways to do things or seeing one of my friends do something and then deconstructing it and trying to one up them. Um,
Did you have some
so,
mentors with lighting?
like I said, one of the biggest impacts on my lighting originally came from when I was still back in television and film in college. I learned how to light for television. So you're
Okay.
dealing with hot lights and all of that. So I was indoctrinated into studio lighting there. When I got into boudoir, one of my biggest impacts was Craig Lemaire.
Okay.
Um, he is an absolute lighting guru. Before I started following him in probably 2012. And then I met him at the very first AIBP retreat in LA, in 2015. And one of the most impactful things in my entire career was the way that the layout of the whole retreat was. Instructors were staying in one mansion, the attendees were in another mansion and whatnot, but I somehow angled to get into the instructor's mansion. So at like 2 o'clock in the morning in the foyer of this mansion, he has one of the models that he's shooting. And I just sat in the corner and watched for like an
Mm.
hour and a half and just absorbed and looked at things. And that's how I learn. It's like I love just being a sponge and seeing someone do what they do and then deconstructing it into my own sort of workflow and how I do it and adapting it to mine.
Mhm.
Became really good friends with Craig, and the points where it's like we'll have competitions back and forth where I'll see him do something and I'm like, oh no, I got to do and one up that and I'll do it. And I remember it was at WPPI shooting in the Neon Boneyard, one year. I want to say this was like 2018. I did a shot where I'm laying on the ground. I've got the lens right at the tip of her toe, so completely distorting this sort of supermodel like stretch of her leg to give her this amazing, just really overbearing stance. Looked incredible. And I'm like, he was known for that sort of angle. And so I edited it, posted it up on Facebook, and like hashtag and tagged like Craig Lemaire angle or something like that. And um, it's like I love that. Another influence, Nino Batista out of Texas.
Oh yeah.
I've
He's been on my show,
become
and
great.
yeah,
He's
powerful.
amazing as a photographer. He's a great friend. I was actually just talking to him, and I've had him up and hosting his workshops at my studio. And I always sit there, and you can learn from anyone. Doesn't matter if they're a beginner, they're a master,
Right.
whatever. And there's points where he was sitting there in my old studio where it used to have 8 foot drop ceilings. And he's like, give me your biggest modifier. And we already had a 7 foot parabolic umbrella on the strobe. And I'm like, you've got it. He's like, no, you've got a bigger one. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I don't. You have it. It's on there. And he's like, no. And he pulls the umbrella off, flips the strobe so it's pointing my 850 square foot white drop ceiling. And he's like, you have an 850 square foot modifier.
Mm.
And
And you're like,
I'd been in the studio
nice.
for 2 years and it was like my head exploded.
Yeah.
So it's amazing when small, simple things you can overlook for the longest time and someone just comes into your space and says, hey, look at this. And then
Right.
you're changed forever.
Right. Yeah. So I think the moral of that story is get involved, go to classes, go to conventions, take a week with people like you and Greg, get like learn, experience, shoot, watch people, sitting in our spaces all by ourselves, DIY, do it, is that do it
Yep.
yourself? Yeah. Um, can only take you so far. And so I love that you just slurped it all up and I'm
Don't
reading
ever
up.
stop learning.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I managed to have a career for 40 plus years. And when like with this coaching thing, when it's like, um, oh, this is a whole topic I know nothing about. Yay. I get to go to conventions and actually take notes again on things that I want to learn and meet mentors in this field. And yeah, I if I could do my career over again, I would not have been afraid to actually rent a studio instead of using the apartment above my garage because I'm very drawn. I do like soft light. I do, but I've also been drawn to wanting to do more edgy things, more contrasty things, using strips of light over somebody, all those things. But my 11 by 12 camera room, it with not digital, so we can't expend a background or, remove those legs that are on the background. It it was challenging. Um,
I'm
oh
I've
yeah,
been blessed. I'm like I started with, like I said, an 850 square foot studio, and 3 years ago moved into my current and should be my forever home, which is a 3,000 square foot studio with a
love it.
1,500 square foot shooting space,
Yeah.
13-foot ceilings, and it allows me to do everything that I want. I'm like, I work with big boom stands, so I can put lights
Mhm.
where you normally can't put a light, and it creates a different look and separates me from the person who's just got a straight up and down light stand where they can change the height, they can tilt, and they can rotate. I can sit there and I can put a boom and put the light right over the top of you and create a different effect and put light exactly where I want it,
Right.
um, without spill elsewhere. So it's, yeah, like I said, I geek out on lighting. I'm incredibly blessed that, as you mentioned, I'm sponsored by a bunch of different companies, one of which is Geekoto Lighting. So I get all of their toys to play with, and whenever they come out with something new, it's like, okay, send that to me. I want to try and do this with it. And it's the biggest thing is play.
Hmm.
Yes, this is what we do for a living, but I had a conversation with Michelle about a year ago where we were at my son's hockey tournament and I was shooting some of the other games, and she's like, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, you forget that photography, yeah, it may be what I do for a living, but it's also my hobby. I'm
Hmm.
like, I enjoy doing this and capturing these things. And she was like, I never really thought of that. So remember, it's not just a job. This is something that most of us picked up as a passion, and don't get caught up in the business side of it and get out of that posing rut or doing the same thing over and over again. Take a day and play in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Hire a model if need be to have a subject that knows how to move and learn from that, because you'll pick up posing techniques by working with someone who knows how to pose versus having to take a posing class necessarily, which you will learn a ton from. But there's something to be said of just working with someone who knows how their body lights and how to move with it and absorbing from that. So find those days, whether it be once a month, once a quarter, once a year, whatever. I know if I miss a conference and it goes a couple of months before I get to another one, I start to feel creatively sort of stale because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not around other creatives. I usually schedule just fun creative shoots when I'm at WPPI. I get out into the desert and shoot because I don't have that in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Um, find those things, get out, take workshops outside of your local area. Find ways to just practice and enjoy.
Right. And I think teaching, as soon as we feel like there's something that we know that someone else might want to learn, uh, provides a lot of those opportunities you're talking about. I noticed that um, a lot of the photographers that were meriting and their work was going loan were people who were teaching a lot. And um, in I don't know the policy now, but the teachers used to be able to enter work that they did when they were teaching. The students can't, but the teachers could. And so I would see a lot of images that I knew were taken during classes where the models were provided and there were just the equipment you needed, and the teacher, I imagine, is trying to push their own envelope. And like when you're trying to show somebody else, you're bringing out your best. You know what I'm talking about? That
Oh
just
yeah.
the act of that environment, when you're not the learner, you're the teacher, it also grows us. So yeah, so get out there and teach too, share what you know. um yeah, okay. I had Do I have one more quick question before we're out of time? Is there, and maybe you've already covered this, but is there any tip or two about th- the the kind of lighting that's dramatic? Like what can people be thinking about, or is like what do you got that you can hand somebody a new thought about lighting? And
So
please, please excuse the stupid wording of my question. Yes.
totally excused. When it comes to artificial lighting, the main reason why a lot of people don't go that route is they're afraid of it. Um, it's a lot more simple than you think. And when I get into my most simplistic of lighting classes, all the way up to my most advanced ones, the one key thing that I tell everyone to remember is okay, the oldest brand of light in existence is the sun.
Mm-hmm.
The best hour to shoot with, or at least claim to be, is golden hour. So it's like, okay, the sun is above you. Where's golden hour? The sun is over at that sort of 45-degree angle area. Okay, now why is it any different if you're using artificial light? Put the light above you, move it over to that 45-degree angle.
Mm.
And this is where, especially when it comes to boudoir, everyone starts to get freaked out of like, okay, well, what happens when I have them laying down? I'm like, it doesn't work the same as if they were sitting on a portrait stool. I'm like, well, imagine that you have a pole coming out of the top of their head attached to that light. So no matter where you move their body, imagine that pole coming out, and that's where you want that light to be and coming from that angle in order to create that same look, whether you're going for a Rembrandt pattern or clamshell or split light, whatever it may be. don't overcomplicate it. Start with that general orientation of where you think best light is, which generally, like I said, above 45-degree angles, golden hour, and then adapt from there. That's your basic starter. From there, you start to experiment of, okay, how do I want to feather this? Do I want it softer or harder? And you choose your modifier based off of that. Um, get in with someone who's passionate about light and learn from them. Not just someone who 10 minutes ago they picked up a light, they had one great shoot, had a huge sale, and said, "Hey, I'm a lighting guru on this." And it's something that has happened a lot across the photo industry, where especially during the past 4 years, where people became extremely successful because there was a lot of money being spent with all the extra pandemic funds, the fact that people were stuck in their houses and then all of a sudden had money to spend and wanted to get back out into the world and enjoy things. And now the economy has shifted, those funds aren't there, and a lot of these people who became educators are now struggling because they weren't real true successes. It was they were riding the tidal wave of the pandemic.
Hmm.
So find someone who you know has been doing this long enough. You've seen their work, you know is passionate about what they do, and vet them. Don't just go by, oh, they've got 9,000 Facebook followers or whatever, and they said that they're the best. Um, have they spoken at major conferences? Are
Right.
they actually backing things up? Are you seeing current work out of them?
Mm.
Like that's one of the things that drives me nuts is when you've got people that are talking about, oh yeah, here's this lighting technique, and all you're seeing out of them is stuff that they're either shooting at their workshops or work that's 5, 10 years old. And you're not seeing new things out there, and they're not sort of evolving with the way that the industry is moving.
Hmm.
You're seeing a lot of more advanced lighting setups now with the fact that it used to be you were either strobes or you were continuous lighting. Now it's like you can use LED tubes, you can use flat LED panel. There's all these different toys that are coming out, and not to say that they're better or you need to use them, but we're evolving. The fact that now AI is evolving into the whole world of editing, not necessarily creating. I don't believe that AI in creating work should be considered photography, but using it as a tool to cull, to help with post-production, things like that. I think you need to be current and you need to be a working photographer in order to be an educator. And these are the things that so many people out there I see are complaining about, oh, I did this course and I don't feel it was worth the money. Well, did you vet the photographer ahead of time that was teaching it? Like, you're partially responsible yourself for what it is you spend your money on.
Right.
Um, and the fact I come from both sides of it, where I spend money on education every year myself and attend conferences and these things, but we put on our own AIBP retreat and conferences, and so I always make sure that the speakers that we have are top notch and that they're not just fluff and actually are speaking to things that are there and are valuable, something that
Hmm.
I would spend my money on. So, aside from any tip or trick, it's more about finding someone who resonates with you in their style
Hmm.
and doing those one-on-one mentorships or those smaller workshops, because that's when you can really get in and pick their brains.
Right.
Or, like I said, what I did with Craig, sit in the corner and watch,
Hmm.
and then take it into your own brain and deconstruct it and put it back together so that it becomes your own. You
Right.
don't ever want to replicate what I've done, what you've done, what anyone else has done. Put your spin on it.
But first we have to learn how to do the basics and then we can spin. Um, I don't 1,000% agree with you that people have to be working. When I started coaching, I put all my energy into growing that. So my portrait business uh, got quieter by choice because I put all that energy into there. But I had 30 years of full-time photography experience, and my focus is the business side. But totally agree with you. Uh, Looking at the how long someone has been in business, if they've been teaching, if they, I'm a big like proponent of people who have PPA degrees and are actively involved in our profession in many ways. So I appreciate what you're saying is
Yeah.
this person the real deal? And I've had many people that I coached that had done these other things and they just didn't get enough of what they needed. And so I was able to help them not ha like those things they did weren't wasted, but then to help them actually make it come true as a dream. So, well, I think
It
that
just seemed there was a large sort of influx of people that overnight in the
yes,
past 4 years picked up a camera and instantly said, "Oh, I've been doing this a month. I can educate and teach now."
I
And
totally know what
that's
you
more
mean.
so what I was saying as far as you need to be a working photographer and doing this for some time so that you might not have, if you've been doing this for 40 years, yeah, you have a bank of knowledge that you can call back on. If you've been doing this for 4 months, no, I'm sorry, you're
Right.
not in any realm. I'm like, I didn't start educating until probably 2017. So I've been shooting for 7 years at
Hmm.
that point before I ever even thought about. And I'd been asked to speak, and I'm like, no, I'm not ready. I don't have the level of confidence. I don't have the level of knowledge that I feel is going to resonate with people and give them the value that they want. And that is something that I think has gone by the wayside recently,
Right.
where it's like, nope, I picked up a camera, I'm awesome, and I'm an educator now. And I'm like, really? You haven't even been doing this a year, and
Right.
you're selling guides or promoting workshops, and it's tough, and it's a little bit more in the boudoir industry because there's a lot less sort of regulated education for the boudoir industry.
Mm.
There's because PPA doesn't really have a boudoir degree, and it's part of the reason why
Oh.
in 2021 I bought AIBP was to have more of a defined sort of group and not so much necessarily governing body, but to help one push the agenda of the boudoir industry forward because we've been looked at as the redheaded stepchild of the photo industry for quite some time.
Hmm.
Um, the photo companies and even associations like PPA, they look and they're like, oh no, that's porn. And it is the furthest thing from it when you actually look at what true boudoir is. And so part of what I do is help create community, help provide education by facilitating webinars, our retreat. But one of the biggest things that I do is behind the scenes in working with different associations and companies to get better representation, better education at the larger conferences, so that unlike when I started, when I went to WPPI, it used to be two or three boudoir classes being taught, and they were taught by wedding photographers that shot maybe 3 or 4 boudoir sessions a year. And I'm
Right.
sitting in the class and I'm like, I shot 4 last month. I'm like, why am I in the seat? And so now it's like they have boudoir summits, they have full boudoir track at WPPI. And that's something that's come about in the past couple of years. And a lot of it because I've been working with them behind the scenes. I was part of the first boudoir summit that they debuted in 2021. And it's nice to see that there's an actual boudoir track. I'm like, Imaging has had their deep dives and is acknowledging the genre a little bit more. They are still, of the two major conferences, more hesitant to embrace boudoir fully.
Well,
But they're slowly coming along.
look how long it took them to get a wedding division, like 150 years. So,
Oh, yeah.
uh, so we are really running out of our kind of agreed time of about an hour. I think we might be a little over. So I just would like you to share how to get in touch with you. And I know you have an offer of a membership with the AIBP. So first of all, if someone wants to look at your work, get in your world, where's the best place to go?
So first off, if you're on Facebook, don't hesitate to friend me. I am more than happy to talk. I'm not one of those people that doesn't answer their own messages. I'm like, if you message me on Facebook, you're talking to me. Um, you can see my work on my website, coutureblack.com, or Instagram, Couture Black Photo.
Okay.
AIBP website is AIBP HOTOG. So it's AIBP Photog, but it's only one P .com. And listed in the notes for this, I will have a code that Lucy can share with you for a discounted membership, or if you want to reach out to me directly, message me through Facebook, or you can email me, Shawn@coutureblack.com,
Love it.
and I will give you a specific code for a discounted yearly membership to AIBP.
Great. Thank you for that. Stay tuned, people, for what wrap up I can do. There's so much content here that it could take me another hour to wrap up all the thoughts exploding in my brain, but I'll try. And Shawn, thank you so, so much for everything you're doing for the industry, for pushing those envelopes, for being an advocate, for um, well, all of it, and for that, like finding that passion and that why and figuring out how to make the world better one click at a time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm like 1 hour goes by so quick. I'm like,
Mhm.
anytime you want to have me back, I am more than willing to spend more time with you and talk either tech or boudoir, or whatever is going on in the world of San Diego and Boston.
Good, good, good,
It's
good.
been fun.
I want to get you out here. Um, right now, my local association, uh, I just won't go into it, but I, I, yeah. Anyway, I want them to reach out and get more people like you again, like we used to to pay you to fly out here and maybe do a day-long workshop in addition. So maybe I'll put a bug in their ear if you're open to that. But
Definitely.
yeah,
Oh, definitely. I love doing some of the local state conferences. I'm like, because you get a chance, they're a smaller group that you're not up on some platform stage, and you can really take time with the individuals where you're talking to a group of maybe 25 to 30 people and doing a full day with them. I did last year for Maine's PPA convention. I did one of their smaller classes for a couple of hours, but they had me for a full day as sort of their bonus day. And I'm like, that was cool to really get in and have conversations and answer specific questions. So I'm more than open to that. Definitely connect with me offline and let me know what I can do to try and help it make it happen.
okay. Yeah, we have a great local group. I- I've been, I'm the longest active member, going on 38 years, something like that. And just such wonderful people and creative and just hungry to learn. So, yeah, we'll talk about that offline here. But anyway, great big thank you, Shawn. Look forward to connecting more.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And like I said, everyone else, just keep learning and stay passionate about what we do. And like we're all blessed to make a living as artists. So stay passionate and enjoy what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, hello. I'm back. And man, Shawn is just a wealth of inspiration and information. I imagine if you've made it this far, you agree with that. So he started in film and TV. He actually went to school for all of that. He's always been a creative uh, and wanted a career with that. And he was having a great career in that. And then the company closed. So he started his business as a photographer, started with weddings, like a lot of us do. Um, and in recent times, 7, 8 years, I think he said he discovered his passion for doing boudoir photography. And his lighting is very dramatic. He doesn't just sort of go outdoors and hope for the best. He has a very specific way that he loves to shoot and play in the studio. And learning that he is colorblind has been something that he discovered his passion for the drama because of his special form of colorblindness. So I love that he took what we could maybe call something negative and it's turned positive. But most importantly, I love how he shared about finding our why in photography and letting it serve the world. So his why is truly because he thinks about the women in his life and how he would love for them to know their power and their beauty um, and have the experience that he creates. So that informs him, that supports his passion for offering that perspective for others. Um, and then we just talked a lot about the importance of getting educated, getting experience, having friends and mentors and people that we mentee, and photographing, playing, learning, experimenting, going to conferences, teaching at conferences, getting involved in education and in just the creative aspect of it that's beyond the financial benefits. So remember to check me out on YouTube if you're listening, or check me out at lucydumascoaching.com and get in touch if you have a question about anything. All righty, that's it for now. Bye.